Most people who grow tomatoes at home spend money they don't need to spend. They walk down the fertilizer aisle, stare at bags with numbers they don't fully understand, and pick the most expensive one, hoping it will fix whatever isn't working. And then they go home, apply it, and wait. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes, and this is the part nobody talks about, it actually makes things worse. Here's what most gardening advice skips over. The things your tomato plants need most are probably already in your kitchen. Not in a bag, not on a store shelf, in your trash bin, headed for the landfill, every single morning. Banana peels, eggshells, coffee grounds, onion skins. Most of us throw these away without a second thought. But what if the reason your tomatoes aren't fruiting the way you hoped isn't about what you're missing at the store? It's about what you're throwing away at home. That's exactly what this video is about. By the end, you'll have a complete homemade mixture recipe you can make tonight, with things already in your kitchen. And more importantly, you'll understand why it works, so you can use it at the right time and actually see the difference. But before we get into all of that, I want to ask you something. Drop a comment right now and tell me where in the world you're watching this and what time it is where you are. I'm genuinely curious, and I read and reply to every single comment. It always surprises me how many corners of the world this reaches.
Tomatoes are absolutely incredible.
Now let's get into what your tomato plants have actually been trying to tell you. We're going to follow the tomato plant through its life, from the moment it goes into the ground to the moment it finally starts giving you fruit. And at each stage, something tends to go quietly wrong in a way most people never catch. More importantly, at each of those stages, there's something sitting in your kitchen right now that can help. Let's start at the very beginning. The early stage, when the plant looks fine, but isn't really. You plant your tomato seedling. It looks okay. A week passes, 2 weeks pass. The plant is alive, but it's just sitting there. Not really growing. Leaves are a little pale, stems are thin, and nothing seems to be happening. You water it. You wait. Still nothing much. A lot of gardeners assume the plant needs more fertilizer at this point, so they add more. And in some cases, that makes things worse, because what the plant actually needs during this early stage isn't a large dose of anything. It needs nitrogen, specifically, in gentle amounts, to build out its leaves and develop a strong root system underground. The roots are where everything starts. If the roots don't spread properly in these first few weeks, the plant will struggle for the rest of the season, no matter what you feed it later. Here's what's likely happening in the soil during this time. The plant is doing most of its work below the surface, not above it. The roots are reaching outward, feeling for nutrients and moisture, building the foundation that will eventually support a full canopy of leaves and clusters of fruit. That process takes energy and nitrogen. Gentle, steady nitrogen is what fuels it. This is where used coffee grounds come in, and it's probably the simplest thing in this entire video. Coffee grounds that have already been brewed contain a gentle amount of nitrogen, along with small traces of potassium and phosphorus. More importantly, they improve the texture in the soil around the roots. They help it hold moisture without getting waterlogged. And they support the microscopic life in the soil that helps break nutrients down into forms the roots can actually absorb. You don't need to do anything complicated. Take about half a cup of used coffee grounds, the ones you'd normally rinse down the drain, and mix them lightly into the top inch of soil around the base of the plant. Once a month during May and June is enough. You're not flooding the plant with nutrition. You're quietly improving the environment the roots are growing through, and that difference can show up weeks later in how well the plant handles everything that comes next. One thing worth knowing: coffee grounds can gradually make the soil slightly more acidic over time if you overdo it. A thin layer, worked in lightly, is the right approach. The goal is to supplement the soil, not to transform it. Tell me in the comments, are you a coffee drinker? Because if you are, you already have this ingredient ready, and you've probably been throwing it away every morning without realizing it. AI visual note. Illustration of young roots spreading outward through loose, textured soil. showing underground development that happens invisibly in the first weeks after planting. The flowering stage, the silent reason your flowers fall off. Now the plant is growing. It's getting bigger. The leaves are full. And then one morning you wake up and there are flowers. Little yellow clusters all over the plant. You feel good about this. This is what you've been waiting for. And then the flowers start falling off. Not all of them, but enough. The petals drop before any fruit begins to form, and you're left staring at a plant that's clearly alive and growing, but somehow not producing anything. This is one of the most frustrating experiences in home gardening, and it has a cause that most people never consider, because the cause isn't obvious. In many cases, the problem isn't that the plant lacks something. The problem is that it has too much of something. Specifically, too much nitrogen. Here's the thing about nitrogen. It's great for building leaves and stems in the early stage, but if you keep giving the plant high amounts of nitrogen, once it starts flowering, that energy gets redirected. The plant keeps putting out more leaves, more green growth, more stem, and it deprioritizes the work of turning those flowers into fruit. You end up with a beautiful, lush green plant that gives you almost nothing to eat. More care, less harvest. That's the quiet trap that a lot of home gardeners fall into. What the plant actually needs during the flowering stage is potassium. Potassium is one of the main reasons fruit fills out properly instead of staying small or dropping early. It helps the plant manage water inside its own tissues, strengthens the connection between flower and stem, and supports the whole process of fruit formation from the inside out. And this is where banana peels become something genuinely useful. Banana peels contain high amounts of potassium, along with smaller amounts of calcium and magnesium. And the simplest way to get those nutrients to your plant is to make what's sometimes called banana peel water. You don't need to bury the peels or do anything complicated. Just cut a peel or two into rough pieces, drop them into a jar of water, and let them soak for about 24 to 48 hours. Then take that water and pour it slowly around the base of the plant. The nutrients have leached into the water, and the roots can absorb them without any risk of burning or overloading the soil. A lot of people buy bunches of bananas every week without thinking twice. The fruit gets eaten, the peels go in the trash. And meanwhile, the tomato plants outside are in the exact stage of growth where that potassium would make the biggest difference. If this is the first time you've heard that banana peels have this much going on inside them, go ahead and tap like on this video. It helps me understand what kind of information is actually useful to you, and it's the reason I keep making videos like this one.
Really saved my zucchini this year.
AI visual note. Illustration of potassium moving through water into root tissue, showing the invisible process of nutrient absorption, not a footage demonstration, but a visualization of what happens around the roots. The fruiting stage. The dark spot mystery nobody explains properly. Let's say the flower's held. The plant is setting fruit. Small green tomatoes are forming, and things are finally starting to look the way you hoped. Then, as the fruit begins to grow, you notice something wrong. A dark spot appears on the bottom of one tomato, then another. The spot gets larger, turns brown and leathery, and the fruit starts to look like it's rotting from the bottom up. Most people who see this for the first time assume it's a disease or insects. They look it up, get worried, and start thinking about treatments. Some people pull the affected fruit and throw the whole plant away, convinced something is spreading through the garden. Here's the truth about that dark spot, and it changes everything once you understand it. It isn't caused by disease. It isn't caused by insects. There's no fungus involved, no bacteria that started this, not at the beginning, at least. What's actually happening is that the fruit isn't receiving enough calcium during the time it needs it most. The condition is called blossom end rot, and the reason it's so misunderstood is that it often has nothing to do with how much calcium is in your soil. Many gardens have plenty of calcium in the ground. The problem is that the plant can't move it to where it needs to go. Calcium travels through the plant with water. It essentially rides the flow of moisture from the roots up through the stems and into the developing fruit. When that water flow is interrupted, when the soil goes from dry to wet to dry, again without consistency, calcium gets stranded. It can't reach the fruit in time. The cells at the bottom of the tomato start to break down, and that dark, sunken spot is the result. This means the most important thing you can do about blossom end rot has nothing to do with buying a calcium supplement spray. It's about watering more consistently, same time, similar amount, every day or every 2 days. That alone can stop the problem from appearing in the next round of fruit. The second part of the solution is eggshells. Eggshells are made almost entirely of calcium carbonate, and when you crush them finely and work them into the soil around the base of the plant, they slowly break down and add calcium to the soil over time. This isn't an instant fix, it's a slow, steady contribution that improves things across the whole season and into the next one if you do it consistently. The simplest method is to rinse your eggshells, let them dry completely, then crush them with your hands or the back of a spoon into a rough powder. Scatter a small handful around the base of each plant and mix lightly into the top layer of soil. What that dark spot is really telling you isn't that you failed. It's that the plant was under stress and the water wasn't steady enough to keep everything moving. Now you know what it means. That's already more than most people growing tomatoes in their backyard ever figure out. AI visual note. Illustration of calcium moving through the plant's internal pathways toward a developing fruit, and what happens when that flow is disrupted by inconsistent watering. A conceptual diagram, not a footage scene. The hidden layer. Why the soil itself matters more than any single ingredient. There's something that runs underneath everything we've talked about so far. And it's the reason that homemade inputs can work so well when they're used thoughtfully, and why they sometimes seem to do nothing at all when the soil underneath isn't in good shape. Your soil is not just dirt. When it's healthy, it's alive with billions of microscopic organisms, bacteria, fungi, tiny creatures, working constantly to break down organic matter into forms that plant roots can actually absorb. When you add coffee grounds or banana peel water or crushed eggshells to the soil, what you're really doing, in part, is feeding those organisms. They do the work of converting what you add into something the plant can use. They are the bridge between the kitchen scrap and the root. When the soil is full of that kind of life, things just work better. Disease has a harder time taking hold. Nutrients move more freely. The plant develops a kind of quiet resilience that shows up not in a sudden explosion of growth, but in steady, consistent health across the whole season. The problem is that certain habits quietly destroy that life over time. Applying concentrated chemical fertilizers directly to bare, dry soil in heavy doses can reduce microbial activity significantly. The soil becomes dependent on external inputs, rather than building its own capacity. It doesn't happen overnight, but over a few seasons, you can end up with soil that looks fine from the surface, but functions poorly underneath, and no matter what you add, the results are disappointing. This is where onion skins and garlic skins come in, and they're probably the most overlooked kitchen scrap in the whole conversation. Both contain natural compounds that support beneficial microbial activity in the soil, along with potassium, calcium, and trace minerals. The easiest way to use them is to fill a jar with the dry outer skins you'd normally throw away while cooking. Cover them with water and let them steep for about 2 days. That liquid, poured around the base of your plants once a week, quietly feeds the living layer of your soil in a way that builds up over time. There's a small but meaningful sign that your soil is moving in the right direction. After rain or watering, it starts to smell earthy, deep and rich, almost like a forest floor. That's not a random smell, that's biological activity. It's the sign that the soil is doing what it's supposed to do. And when you start to notice that smell in your own garden, it means what you've been adding is working. The reason this matters beyond the garden, and it's worth saying out loud, is that healthy soil means fewer chemicals needed, which means a safer space. If you have grandchildren who run through the yard, or a dog who digs around in the beds, or kids who grab things off the plant and eat them right there, the less you're relying on synthetic inputs, the better that environment becomes. That's not a small thing. If you want to keep learning this kind of thing, the stuff that never makes it onto the fertilizer bag, hit subscribe. I put out videos like this regularly, and subscribing is the easiest way to make sure you don't miss the next one when it comes out. AI visual note. Illustration of a cross-section of healthy soil showing microscopic organisms breaking down organic matter near the root zone. A visualization of the living system beneath the surface, not a footage scene. The complete mixture. What to make. Tonight, everything in this video has been building toward this. Each ingredient we talked about plays a specific role at a specific time, and there's a simple way to combine the most important ones into a single mixture that covers the flowering and fruiting stages, the period when most home gardeners see their biggest disappointments. Here's what you need: 3 to 5 banana peels, 6 to 10 eggshells that have been rinsed and dried, and about a liter of water. That's it. You don't need anything special from the store. Crush the eggshells as finely as you reasonably can, the finer the better, but it doesn't have to be a perfect powder. Cut the banana peels into rough pieces. Combine everything in a pot. Bring it to a gentle simmer, and let it go for about 30 minutes. Take it off the heat and let it cool completely. Then strain out all the solids and dilute the liquid with 4 liters of plain water before using it. That gives you roughly 5 liters of a gentle, balanced liquid that you can pour slowly around the base of each plant. Use this every 2 weeks during the flowering and fruiting stages, not more often than that. The goal isn't to force anything, it's to give the plant a steady, gentle supply of what it needs most during the weeks when those needs are highest. One thing worth saying plainly: more is not better here. If you notice the leaves starting to look slightly yellow in a way that doesn't make sense, ease back. The plant is communicating with you, and yellowing can sometimes be a sign of over-application rather than deficiency. Observe the plant. Adjust based on what you see. That's how experienced gardeners work, not by following a rigid schedule, but by paying attention. The feeling of pulling a ripe tomato off a plant you've been watching all season, one that you fed with things you made yourself from what was headed for the trash, is genuinely different from buying produce at the store. Neighbors walk by and ask what you're doing differently. Family members want to know the secret. And the answer is actually one of the most satisfying things you get to say. Just a few things from the kitchen. What's the one ingredient from this video that surprised you most? Drop it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious which one catches people off guard, and I'd love to hear what you're thinking. Thank you for spending this time here. The short version of everything in this video is this: your tomato plants move through stages, and what they need changes as they grow. Coffee grounds early on, banana peel water when the flowers appear, eggshells and consistent watering as the fruit develops, and onion skin tea to keep the soil underneath healthy all season long. None of it requires special equipment or expensive products. Most of it starts tonight, with what's already in your kitchen. If this gave you something useful, a like on this video genuinely helps. It's how more people find this kind of content. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is a good time. There's a lot more where this came from. Take care of your garden, take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.